Let's start with our next topic. Efficient product engineering collaboration in hypergrowth companies. And we have someone from a company that really grew fast. Our next speaker is the author of the book, Building Tech. He held roles at companies like SAP and VMware. And now he's CTO at the digital insurance broker Clark that you might have heard from, especially when you listen to German podcasts. Please, warmly welcome Peter Minev.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you. It's always interesting because I have found that one of the key success in life, if you listen more than you talk. But actually at conferences you do only the opposite. You talk and talk and talk, which is very interesting. But anyway, why product engineering and organizations? If you think about it, 30 years ago, or let's say in the 80s, there were almost no digital products. All the products were physical. There were super few digital products, and now everything is digital. Even the airplanes are managed by software, and we buy tickets for the airplanes with software. And our cars and even our refrigerators are full with software. And this is a profound difference, because if you think about it, take the last 30 years of our lives and compare them with any other 30 years in the human history. Even the most advanced one, like ancient Greece or the Roman Empire, they have never been such a big advance in human race driven by technology as in the last 30 years. But there is a problem. The foundation of every tech company is actually the product engineering team. You might have the best idea, but if the product engineering team is not successful, especially on a large scale, then your idea will not fly. You will not build a good product, you will not build a good service. That's why we'll talk about product engineering. I hope it will be really interesting and the content will be valuable. Super shortly about me, Peter Minev. I have experience in some big companies like SAP, VMware. The challenge in these companies was the size of the teams, like more than 1,000 people, many continents, how you make them successful on a large scale. And then in the startups, the biggest challenge was the scale up, because again, in the last, especially in the last 10, 20 years, we have seen a scale of growing companies, which is nothing to compare with the previous years. Probably the biggest example in my experience was Karim, when we grew the tech team from 20 people to 450 in 2 years, 20x scale. How you hire so many people, how you make them successful, how you onboard them. It's quite challenging. I have technical background, even though that I work and I manage with product organizations a lot in my career, but by DNA, I'm a tech person. I will not brag about myself. You can check my LinkedIn profile. Let's go to the topic directly. I cannot tell you how many companies I have seen that they say, why we are hiring so many engineers, but even the smallest change in our web page or the smallest change in our mobile app takes 2 sprints. Why so slow? If we had a startup with 5 people, it would be like 2 days. Why in a bigger company, when we grew, now it takes 2 sprints? What's happening? Or the executive team. What happened? We tripled or doubled our team, and it seems our output is going down. Actually, there are many researches that you can see. I know lines of code are not a big measurement of productivity, not at all. But actually, there are many companies where when you double or triple the size of the team, the output doesn't matter if you measure it with user stories or story points or lines of code is decreasing. How come? Why we are adding people? Because we believe that we will produce more. But it's the opposite. Or the tech team. We are always rushing towards new features and urgencies and deliveries, but we never actually address technical depth. We never improve our software. We have so many MVPs areas, we never do this. And quite often you see 3 of these for the same company. How possible? They are conflicting. That doesn't make sense to be in the same company, but very often you see these in the same companies. The bad thing is that there are too many companies that have these problems, really too many. But there is a good thing, there is a solution. But you might say, if there is a solution, then why we have this problem? Because it's not easy to implement the solution. Think about, let's a little bit slice the product and tech. Think about technology. What is software? We are programming machines. It might be mobile phones, it might be computer screens, it might be monitors, it might be planes, it might be machines. But it's a very complex thing. In the early days, it was a binary programming. Think about programming something very complex with a binary code. Your brain will explode. You cannot do this. That's why in the early days of software engineering, the software programs were like super simple. Just our brains as human beings couldn't grasp the complexity of programming complex machine. And then we had to do something in the technology. We said, okay, we will do abstractions and building blocks so that we can simplify this complex world. And we started with structural programming. We said, okay, if-else loops and for loops and if-else statements, not loops, but for loops. And we gradually started to simplify the complex task of programming machines. And we continue this to have more and more high-level building blocks and abstractions. And now we have these days microservices and many high-level frameworks that help us do this. Think about product. I totally respect any profession on the planet Earth, and for sure there are many important professions, but if you take even the most complex ones, like doctor or construction architect, there is a script that you follow. You have these and these symptoms, and then the doctor should be able to say, okay, then you have this probably sickness, and then this is the medicine that you have to take, and probably there are some edge cases, but in 90% of the case, you expect the doctor to say, yes, that's it. Think about product. Is there a script that every one of us can do? We do A, B, C, and we have Amazon or the next Google. No. So it's super complex. Very similar to the technology, but now the product side. And what happened with the product side, there were a lot of prioritization frameworks, Cologne and thousands of others. There were a lot of frameworks that basically the goal was, let's simplify how we build products, because it's a complex thing, especially for complex products and complex machines that we had to program. But now there is a problem. What are the building blocks? We said, again, the atomic unit of every tech company is the product engineering team. It's not only tech, it's not only product, it's the product engineering team. But what are the building blocks of this? We're just starting to explore in this. And there are many companies who are saying, okay, should we have PM, should we have PO, should we have engineering manager and product manager pair, should we have a domain with engineering leader or product leader or pairs? Just starting to explore this. And this is a big problem. And this is one of the reasons why we have many problems in the delivery of the tech teams or the product engineering teams. It's a win-win. We cannot have successful tech organization without successful product organization, the opposite. I hope it's clear, no need to elaborate on this. In this presentation, I try to show some of the building blocks that I have used in my career to have successful product engineering teams. It's not a comprehensive body of knowledge, so don't assume that this is like a big framework or something. These are few, I hope, successful building blocks in the area of product tech collaboration, which help me to make successful product engineering teams. Let's start with them. I start with a very simple one. But actually, the reason why I listed it here, because I see too many companies that are doing this quite wrong. Why product domains are important? It's easy when you have a small startup and basically the product is like that one team. But when you scale, how you organize your product domains. It's super important, because if you don't get it right, then what you do, you say, oh, every 6 months or 3 months or 1 year, we have to change the product domains. It's easy to do it on PowerPoint in a management room, a management meeting, but it's devastating for the product engineering team. Why? Because first, every person in the team needs to gain product knowledge in the domain. If this is a big complex product, now it has many subparts. It's too complex to grasp the whole product. No engineer in Google knows all the systems in Google. You specialize in certain areas. So then, if you change these areas all the time, I have to start learning from scratch. So it prevents me to build mastery. And also below the surface, for every area, there are software components. How I do if I change all the domains all the time, I cannot build mastery as a software engineer. So the first is really companies have to invest in building the right product domains from early on, and then avoid at any cost changing the product domains. Ideally, product domains have to be changed only if there is pivot in the business strategy, but for sure it doesn't mean that let's not be flexible. For sure you can change the requirements and the prioritization and everything, but product domains should be stable as much as possible. This really kills the productivity of product engineering organizations if you change them often. The other one is autonomous teams. And you say, it's easy. Everyone knows autonomous teams. I put backend, front-end, QA, designer, that's it, I have autonomous team. It's very simple to do agile, like 15 years ago when people started to do agile. Lean methodology is a complex body of knowledge that was developed for decades predominantly by Toyota, with the Toyota production system. It's a complex thing. You have lean ways, you have value stream mapping, you have fundamental, deep body of knowledge. And in the early days of Agile, there were oversimplifications. We do Agile, we have Scrum. What is it? Stand-ups, retrospective, and planning demo, that's it. Oh, 6 months down the road, it doesn't work. Yes, it doesn't work because it's way more complex. The same thing goes with the autonomous teams. It's not just, let's pair front-end, back-end, QA, we have autonomous teams. It's way more complex. So the second thing that I saw in my career that we really have to take this very seriously, any dependency that the teams, ideally the teams have to do everything. Like if someone else deploys the software of the team, this team is not autonomous. If someone else is monitoring the application for failures, it's not autonomous. If anyone else is monitoring the infrastructure that the team is running, it's not autonomous. Any job done outside of the team, then your team is not autonomous. And sometimes it's way more complex because it goes not only with tech functions, also outside of tech functions. If there are some manual contracts which are not automated, not clear, with not clear SLAs, with other functions, your team will be blocked, will be not autonomous. So this is super important for the success of the product engineering organizations. And ideally, if companies can embody all the knowledge of the lean methodology, this can help a lot. Then you can quantify the bottlenecks. You do value stream mapping on part of the process or the whole process. You see the bottleneck, you quantify the bottlenecks, you root cause the bottlenecks, you implement action plan, how to resolve them. You measure this, lead time, cycle time, or other metrics that are popular, and you see the improvement to the process. Top-down versus bottom-up. This is very typical and very interesting one. Imagine we do a startup now. Now imagine we have a team of first 2-3 people in our startup. And we say, I empower you, tell me what to do in my startup. Have we seen any startup doing like this? No, usually the founders have super strong opinion, like we have to do this and that, it's normal. But then the question is, this cannot continue as the company grows because of 2 reasons. First, if you are a founder, you cannot micromanage now the growing team. If you have already 10,000 people or 1,000 people or even less, you cannot go to every team and say, you do this, you do this. The teams have to start doing this bottom up. And the second is, it's easy in the early days because our product is not so complex. But then we grow, our product becomes more complex, and then you cannot grasp the complexity of every part of the product, every corner of the product. Then the people who are there, the teams, they have the best knowledge. But now there is a problem. How? Imagine that we have a startup, and after 2 years we say we cannot scale, and we say from tomorrow we are bottom up. How we do it? It's super difficult. And why it is difficult? Because it's a cultural change, and cultural changes are super difficult. So the one thing that I saw, and I don't think that I have the good recipe for this, is it's super difficult to change the culture of a company. Usually when it is VC round A or B, the latest, when the founders say, no, we cannot do this anymore, and now we say, you're empowered. You cannot do this overnight. It's super difficult. But this is one of the key reasons for failures of product engineering organizations, because then the people say, for the last 3 years, we worked like our founder was coming and telling us what to do. We don't have even we are smart, but we don't have the muscle, the experience in this company to do things bottom up. It's super difficult. And the balance between product engineering scope. This is one of my favorites. I'm pretty sure all of you have seen, we don't have time now. We have to release this feature. Let's do it quick and dirty. First, let's think about it. Why you think that you have more time in future than now? In future, you have more clients, more challenging goals, bigger goals to achieve profitability, and et cetera, why you think that in future you have more time? Fine, we say, okay, probably we'll not do this in future, but we know that in future it will slow us down. Now there is the trick. There are a lot of researches that show that the quick is actually slow. There are many researchers that do in exactly the same conditions, pair programming and quick, or test-driven development and quick. In all these cases, the clean, good code was faster in the short term than the dirty code. So this is one of the biggest misconceptions I have seen. People say, we need quick and dirty. No, let's be clear, it will be slow and dirty. So the question is not quick and dirty, it's either you want it clean and fast, or dirty and slow. But there is no such thing like quick and dirty. Slow is slow, short term and long term. I think I have put links here with many experiments on the topic that all of them show that actually writing good code, good quality code, is faster in the short term also, not only in the long term. This is very important about the process of balancing between, there always must be a process of balance between, there's always the question like how much we have to invest in technical depth and in product features. And I always say there must be a process, because if you don't have whatever the process is, like 30, 70, or it depends on the company and the stage of the company and the business context. But if you don't have a process, what will happen, you have very opinionated tech leader and more junior product person, guess what? You will spend a lot of time manufacturing and vice versa, like a lot of time in features or capacity, and you will not have time. You will not have time for tech depth. So there always must be a process, irrelevant of the people who are there, that you really have a healthy balance between how much you invest in tech depth and how much in product features. This one is also like I have found it quite often. Very often, and I have done these mistakes many times. You do an interview and you check for technical skills. Doesn't matter if you're a product manager, let's check prioritization frameworks. Do you know Cano? Do you know this? Do you know that? How you prioritize? Or you check like technical engineering, data structures, algorithms, design patterns, architectural patterns, system design thinking for architects. Fine, but then when the person joins the company, you say, oh, this person doesn't have actually the behavior that we need for our company. And we rarely check this in the interviews. And this is such a big problem. Assume that we have a startup. We don't know what to do. We don't have a plan for the next 5 years. We have to be very agile and ownership and people to handle ambiguity. And if you get a person who is saying, no, I want a 5-year roadmap and super clear requirements, even this person is the most technical and skilled person in the world, it will not be a good fit for our startup. So I always found that ideally I have to put 50% on behaviors of what we want to see as a behavior in our company versus only technical skills or predominantly technical skills. And to be honest, technical skills you can learn. Yes, for sure, if the gap is too big, it's a problem, but you can learn. But actually, it's super difficult to change the behavior of the people. It's way more difficult. So my suggestion is make a lot of interviews also for behaviors. Scale. At Kareem, we grew from 20 to 450 in 2 years. How you do it? We have to continuously rethink the product domains to scale, not to change, but how to scale them, the processes. Let me be very specific. How you take technical decision if you have a small startup of 10, 20 people. You take probably the 2 most senior people and say, they take the technical decision. Fine. If you are 50 people, probably say, now we have 5 or 6 senior people. We do architectural council or something like group, they take. How you do it when you have 500 people or 1,000 people? You cannot take the more senior 30 people and say this is not decision-making group. Everything becomes way more complex as the product engineering organization scales. Everything. And then it is super, super important if you grow your teams to think about how we have to improve every part of our product engineering organization in terms of process or design, teams, collaboration models, and just what worked in the past will not work in future. And we learned it the hard way at Karim. Probably the worst one. And this is very often, now when I talk with companies, they say, what do you think about the hybrid, remote, etc.? And I have one answer clear for this, I don't know. And there is clear reason why I don't know. It took several decades for the big tech companies, predominantly Silicon Valley, to figure out the best setup for the office. If you go, I don't know if some of you have been in the Menlo Park in the headquarters of Facebook or in the Google or in VMware, where I worked for 6 years, but actually they're very similar. If you go inside, it's very similar. But it took several decades until these companies figured out what is the best setup. And they experimented a lot. You can see throughout the years a lot of experimentation. So we have small offices, small rooms, or big cubicles, several decades. We are just in the journey of figuring out what is the best setup for hybrid and remote work. We're just starting it. We're just starting to talk about should we put the camera on or off, Zoom fatigue or not, or how we onboard junior people. If you're a junior person and everything is remote, how you onboard this person. We don't know what we don't know. And I think it will take at least 10 years until after 10 years we know, okay, now we know more or less what is the best setup for remote product engineering team or hybrid. Yeah. But it's really something that the only thing that I advise, and I try to do it myself, experiment as much as possible. There are so many new tools that are appearing for collaboration. Experiment and see what works. I think that's it from my side. I hope it was interesting. 3 minutes before the time, which is a record for me. Happy to answer any questions if you have. Thanks, Alina.
Thank you. Extra credits for the 3 minutes. The microphone for your questions is here in the center. Which questions do you have? You can just get up. You can also just put it like in the center a bit, so that you don't need to sit on somebody's lap to ask a question.
Perfect. Thank you for the presentation. I'm Sadiq Bakil from Datamax. And you told us how not to do bottom-up approach, but how should we do it?
How not to do bottom-up approach.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think that I have I can tell you when it happens. It happens usually in successful companies in the 3rd or 4th year, when the founders who had very strong vision, there are so many companies now in this stage, that now they see that they cannot scale anymore. First, and then they have to empower the teams, purely because now the teams have the expertise in the individual corners. How you do it? I can tell you that few things. It doesn't happen, I don't have the recipe, but it doesn't happen quickly. First, it doesn't happen quickly. One thing that I saw that works is, usually this stage of the startup, you hire people. Hire people who are change agents, like very senior people. Usually in the early days of the startup, there are not so many senior people. Most of the people are, let's say, mid-level or something. It's very difficult to hire someone who is super senior in a startup which is 5 people, right? But when you are 100 people, then probably, and you have projections for growth, probably then you can hire someone who is very senior. Probably this person will say, now I need people at VP or director level who are very senior, and then can help me to be change agents. And I think it happens with time, with a lot of mentoring, and one thing that I always make it very clear to the founders, there will be a moment of degradation, because it's important for sure. We talked in the previous talk about no blaming and etc. But for example, I say, this is what we want to achieve. Your team, you have 1 week, please come up with a plan. I should have the self-discipline, even if your plan is far from perfect, not to say, oh, what is the plan that you came, how possible? But to recognize our efforts and to help you to improve, but it will take time. and there will be degradation of performance. But I think the only solution that I have found in my career is hire people who have this experience, and then they to be together with you, the change agents.
I have one more question, if there is no other.
Where are you?
How do you check for soft skills
Center.
in the interviews?
I don't know how many people here have worked or been interviewed by some of the Silicon Valley, Amazon, Google, Facebook, etc., but they have very similar process. Usually, if I want to check with you for technical skills, it's easy because I ask a direct question. But now think about soft skill, conflict management. I cannot come and say, are you a conflicting person? People say, no. They will say whatever they want to hear, but which will not be the reality. The only way how all these companies are checking is through examples, and these examples should not be theoretical, but should be from your experience. Tell me an example from your career when you had conflict situation with a major stakeholder. Please tell me about the example. What was the origin? How you dealt with this? So through this, it's very difficult to fake this. It's almost impossible to fake because they go very deep, deep, deep. So I have found that you do this through situational questions, and in these questions you even don't ask about the soft skill, but just to check. You check. It's more like this psychological profiling where you don't ask the people directly, but you ask side questions, and through these side questions you make the profile of the person.
Is simple from the very beginning?
What?
Was this process simple from the very beginning to kind of get an answer that is meaningful to you?
In case there are any further questions, you can just get up and go right to the microphone, just to let us know that there are some questions.
I have very interesting blog post on my LinkedIn profile, or you can send me a message. I can send you a blog post how I do behavioral interviews and some lessons learned specifically for behavioral interviews.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. There is another question.
For the very interesting talk. I'm Ivan, data chapter lead. There is a place in your presentation where I think two messages were a bit conflicting, but maybe I did not. I lack some background. So you were saying about changing the product domain or the areas of domains and how that's bad for building expertise, for instance. And at the end, you were saying also consider changing the architecture of the company. One of your last slides were about what worked before doesn't mean that it worked now. So aren't they a little bit conflicting?
There is difference between changing the domains and evolving. Let me be very specific in the example. Assume that together we do a ride-hailing application. One of the key for the ride-hailing application is a marketplace where you basically have an algorithms for matching supply and demand, the drivers and the demand. So now this is a small team of 5 people. They specialize in matching supply and demand through artificial intelligence, through algorithms for this. They specialize in this. When you grow the company, this will grow probably to 50, 60 people or to more than 100 people. This domain, this is not a team anymore, this is a domain. So people don't change the domain, they are still in the domain of matching supply and demand, the marketplace, but actually they way deeper. Now probably they specialize. One team is only ETA. When you open the ride-hailing app, what will be how we calculate the ETA? And the other might be dispatching, but they are still in the same domain. So you evolve the domain or the processes, but you don't change the people. Or now you work on the supply and demand. Tomorrow you work on bookings.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So I think our time's up. We have only about 30 seconds. Do you have a 30 seconds question?
Yes, it's very quick. I'm David from Otto. Does that also work for scaling down?
Which one of many of these things?
All of them.
I don't
Stay
know.
in the domain, but
Scaling
not
down.
interview people for coming, but...
I know scaling down is a big topic these days.
Yes.
I know.
Not at Otto, by the way.
I don't.
But that sounds like a lunch date.
It's too irresponsible to say yes or no. So I'll tell you, I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you.